Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marc Cohn from Spirent. I've been in, and have also been an advisor to a number of companies. And today I'm really pleased to moderate a panel on the evolving cybersecurity landscape that we're going to be talking quite a bit in the next 2 days. I've been working with Layer123 since the very beginning. I sort of was one of those in this room who could resonate with that original slide, that original session in Darmstadt, and organized a panel for that, and have been coming back ever since. So it's really exciting to be able to come back in person. This is my first event since 2019, so glad everybody, we could make it. So SASE has emerged as really a marketecture that was hyped originally by Gartner. I think we're all pretty familiar with the history, but it's starting to emerge, and it's starting also to be embraced by not just the SD-WAN community, but the whole broader telecommunications industry at large. And the advent in many respects is just what we're dealing with now, coming out of the pandemic. Dealing with the hybrid workforce has just not been trivial. It's imposing even more complexity than the remote workforce when you think about it, because now we got to deal with the facilities as well as working wherever anybody is. So since pervasive change can rarely take a straight line path, there's no single unified approach to SASE. So what we're going to hear today is a number of diverse perspectives that are going to consider some of the major challenges as well as opportunities from the perspective of leading managed service providers, as well as some of the vendors who are actually, well, I would call them solution providers more than vendors, who are actually delivering SD-WAN and managed security capabilities in their products to those managed service providers. So, so what I want to do is just start by welcoming our panelists and just to ask each one of them to introduce themselves. And I guess, Daniele, we'll start with you, and then we can go from there.
Thank you, Marc. Good morning, everybody. It's lunchtime, so we'll be fast, I hope. My name is Daniele Mancuso. I work for Sparkle. Next February, I will celebrate my 30th anniversary career in telecom. So I'm quite old, but okay, come on. I currently serve as Chief Product Management. I have 3 product lines at my report. The first one that is related with backbone and infrastructures. Second one that deals with connectivity requirement for enterprises, multi-cloud and security services. And the third one that is related to voice, mobile, IoT, and other stuff. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Frank?
Yeah. Do you hear me? Well, no.
Let's
take the old-fashioned one. Hi, everyone. So I'm Frank Morales. I'm from Orange Business Services. I have had the chance to be the VP Connectivity for Services over the last 9 years, and I have just recently moved to a new strategic value proposition, as we call it, within Orange Business Services, which is secure digital infrastructure, which is supposed to be the convergence of all our capability in delivering infrastructure for companies. Could be in the connectivity, of course, but as well security and cloud. So it's really the convergence of the free world. Nice to be with you today.
Great, thank you, Frank. And
Aamer Akhter, so I run the product management team for VMware SASE.
That was an efficient introduction. Good morning, everybody. Stefano Testa. I'm from Cisco. I've been at Cisco for several years, first in product management in the business units in San Jose, and in the last several years here in Europe, trying to push a lot of the innovations that our business units bring to market And in the last 3 years, focusing on the SD-WAN business, so responsible for the SD-WAN, now becoming SASE, and we'll talk about that, business here in EMEAR and Asia Pacific.
All right, thank you. So I think we're going to get right into it. So our first question is going to be directed to all 4 of our panelists. And while the industry generally agrees that cloud-hosted security functions are going to be integral to our future, and I think what we heard from Robbie's talk as well, given the emergence of telco cloud and the convergence that another key theme of this particular event. There's a number of debates about which security functions are going to be included, what does this architecture look like, where Diego's talking zero trust, or at least touching on that as well as other topics. There's just a number of debates that are going to be raging on. So just to start, to add some context for our audience, first question really is just if each of you can just start by sharing just a glimpse of what does SASE mean to your particular organization. And maybe Frank, why don't you start?
Okay. Thank you, Mark. So let me first give you a personal thought. Is that SASE is about to be dead in the next 2 years. This is a very particular bargain that I have with my strategic director. And it is not just because Gartner invented SASE. Usually speaking, it's more a positive sign. Just because it's too much technical, it's too much internal within the industry. But the concept of SASE, meaning the way to secure the flow from wherever they are starting and wherever they are finishing, is probably the most important growth that we will see inside the industry. And so back to your question, Mark, I don't think there is a generic answer. Whether it is each quarter a plant, a center of research, or someone at home, the balance between the security from where the flow is starting up to the application, whether it is a machine connected or IoT probes or whatever it is, of course, you will have several ways to balance the security all along the journey. And what is most important for us is how do we make sure that there is a consistency all along the journey for all this security? And that it is, of course, fit for purpose depending on the usage, depending on the equipment. The end user could be an employee or could be a machine connected again. So it's really this use case that really need to be adapted for each case of quote-unquote SASE type of things.
Thank you. So, Stefano, I'm going to switch gears and sort of alternate vendors and service providers because I think we'll get an interesting perspective.
Very democratic.
Yeah, exactly. So, Stefano, why don't you share the Cisco perspective?
Sure, absolutely. I'm actually going to say I might not venture in saying when it's going to be dying, but I would agree that it's been more of an effort, I believe, of the industry, and we know the Gartner definition, but to kind of try to put a framework around a trend that we've already been seeing in the industry for several years, and trying to put these boundaries and to formalize. I know you talked about certifications and standardizations. I think we're way, I mean, it'll take years to come to something more standard. Yeah. At the moment, as vendor, we like to, in our marketing material, we like to talk about a journey. It is not a product, it's not a solution, it's a journey, and we like to say your journey, your SASE journey, because what we observe is each customer has a different journey towards SASE and towards a SASE-like architecture, but ultimately it's about converging networking, convergent security. I would add visibility. I know observability, full stack observability, sometimes it gets considered as part of the security stack, but the industry has a number of players in that market. We've acquired some. There's others in the market. So I think it deserves its own area. So it's how do we converge all of that to take into account the new reality, which also the pandemic has just accelerated, but we were already on that trend before the pandemic. So I think SASE, again, is this journey, is unique, which also brings unique challenges for partners, for customers, and for, I believe we'll hear later, for our partners and service providers, because it's not yet at the moment where you can just go and boom, here's a standard offer. But it also opens opportunity to take customers on that journey because they're looking for a trusted advisor. They're looking for expertise. And we'll talk later about the convergence, but bringing that expertise together between two words or three words that historically have been quite siloed, I think represents an interesting challenge and opportunities for those who move fast.
Thank you. So Daniele.
Yes. So I liked a lot the definition of Stefano. It's a journey. And in my opinion, it's a journey to bring back order to the chaos. Why order and why chaos? Well, we always speak about the pandemic as, you know, a kind of jump to the future. And this is exactly what happened if you consider what was and what is today and what is going to be the operating environment of the digital enterprise. Just few sentences. The cloud is the new corporate data center. The internet is the new one. We can say that software as a service is the equivalent of the old application stack. So in all this mess, where there is not anymore the good old hub and spoke architecture, and where users are popping up, consuming application from home, from wherever they are, SASE is the new way to build security in this era. Again, it's a way to simplify, hopefully, this has yet to be seen, in a single pane of glass, what is the major problem of an enterprise today, which is to apply complex networking policies to an ever-changing access environment, to apply security policies to application user profile and devices that are not anymore into the data center, and to let all this to be accessible from a single pane of glass, and moreover, scalable. So that's the complexity that we see today, but it's unavoidable. So the vendor, managed service provider, all of us will have to get there eventually.
Thank you. And I think the journey is key. So Aamer,
Yeah, absolutely. So
as a VMware perspective.
yeah, absolutely. I think it's really interesting for me because before the term SASE was being thrown about, I think many service providers were already doing integrated security services with networking, right? So this is not something completely, it just showed up one day. It is part of a continuum of work that we in this industry, both networking and security, have been working on for decades, right? I think the Gartner thing is also interesting in that it labeled a larger trend that is going on, which is, perhaps it started, way back when the iPhone came out. There was this BYOD, and then there's all sorts of different types of end devices. There's all sorts of different types of users that are inside the corporation, inside the enterprise, but also there's B2B and B2C type relationships with the resources, right? And then there's also this massive trend that you just talked about of like applications moving from traditionally that strong fort inside the data center to either SaaS or IaaS and things like that. And I think that is the super interesting trend, because what that did was what we were moving towards in terms of like, all right, we got networking, hub and spoke, and we got things in the right places, and everything just blew up. Exactly. Right?
The chaos.
Right? And it's fun, right? It's really interesting, but it makes things so complicated. Where is your perimeter? How do you define a user? And I think these are like the larger set of problems that the SASE journey is about, both from a customer perspective, from an enterprise perspective, because they're struggling also, right? And then at the same time, how do you make this simpler for everybody? Just like, how do you define a policy in this distributed world where a networking guy can come in and like, hey, I want the traffic to go this way. By the way, this bypassed all the security policies. That is why it needs to come together.
All right. Well, our next question is going to go to Aamer, actually Stefano and Aamer. And what we're going to talk, what I'm curious about is, and I think that this trend that before we were networking companies, now we're security companies. So what is driving this pivot to why the SD-WAN community in particular, or the vendor community in particular, is sort of driving down and repositioning themselves around security and leading with SASE, because there's certainly a lot of flavor of that in the way it's being projected to the outside world. So Stefano, maybe you can take a attempt.
Yeah, a good question. Well, I don't think it's necessarily pivoting from SD-WAN to SASE. It's to security. It's more than, if you think about it, make a step back. At the end of the day, it's about connecting users, as we said, in a hybrid environments to applications. And you need to do that providing, ultimately, we haven't really talked about it yet, but it's about application experience. It's about that user experience as they connect. And of course, you need to do that in a secure way and have control and visibility. So all of that together will ultimately be delivered by SASE. But why from SD-WAN? Well, SD-WAN was and is becoming a lot more standardized because it's been around for longer. But that was at the base of providing that connectivity, that application experience, that adaptability to a multi-cloud world that Daniele talked about. But I would even say, if you look at SD-WAN itself, it has inherently a set of security functions because zero trust is there from day one, right? You have now these devices that you ship around, they have zero trust. It was never like that in the past. They just come up. You need to have, we heard earlier, the talk about management of keys and zero trust. You have encryption natively into an SD-WAN fabric. You have VPNs and segmentations. So a number of security functions you even have at the edge already implemented into historically SD-WAN devices. So the fact that now a lot of those functions are more and more moving to the cloud and go beyond just the fabric, or even we extend the fabric into the cloud, is just a natural evolution of what the SD-WAN value proposition was. Now, that of course brings for, I think both for vendors and for customers and for service providers, the challenge of bringing a security set of functions and business and people who historically worked a bit on separate services, separate offers, and bring that together. And that is true both of a technology, on the technology side, and on what I like to call the human factor, right? How do we, but maybe we'll talk later about that. I'll stop for now, but I think it's a little bit, again, an evolution from SD-WAN, and it's a natural evolution in that direction, but the market demands that, and it's what we see with customers and the real world situations.
Yeah, I think the evolution is pretty pervasive. I mean, what we're also seeing is things like, I mean, and Aamer, you're going to talk about this, but I mean, even your business units are changing names, and no longer is SD-WAN in the lead. It's more the cybersecurity aspect of whatever that offering might be, whether you're offering solutions, services, products, whatever. But on Aamer, do you want to share your take on what this pivot is all about and why VMware's really addressing this?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the SASE name is a useful term to drive focus, right? And you know, like the joke about the business units is, well, that's what it is today. And then as your focus and as the business and the org things evolve, like, so those things will change.
Yeah, just be careful with the name; it's going to die in 2 years.
So I think what's going on with SD-WAN and SASE, and I think that's kind of like the crux of your question, is that, look, it's like security it needs to be pervasive. You can't just sort of sit off in the corner and do security and say like, hey, bring all the traffic to me. That is not how the world is evolving. The traffic patterns are very different, right? How do you get good user experience? You do best path routing through the internet. If that's the hyper-connected network is the internet. A lot of times it has the best path. SD-WAN has made improvements to make that best path more network optimized. But from a pathing perspective, from a user experience perspective, it is not to do this moat type thing inside of the data center. So the security and the networking teams, they do need to come together on policy. And to be able to do that, that has been super difficult like living in their, I think people have been using the term silos all day today, and that's what a lot of SASE is about. It's about convergence within the enterprise teams, it's about convergence within the vendors, and it's also about convergence within the SPs. It's like, how do we monitor these things together? I know in one of the tier one service providers, those teams, cybersecurity and networking, have actually been collapsed together, right? So it's not just something happening in the vendor space, it's actually happening in our customers as well as in the service provider space.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into our next question, which is going to be directed to Frank and Daniele. And what I wanted to touch upon is really what you've already brought up. I mean, there's a number of challenges to start to migrate a security architecture to a cloud-based model. And it's a lot more than that. I mean, it's really up-leveling security as well. It's not just the physical re-implementation into the cloud. But what SASE and that opportunity also is having an impact on at least the service provider organizations are taking these separate silos and bringing them together for cloud, for the cybersecurity area, and of course the networking area, and probably other areas because of the large nature of your organizations. So how about Daniele, you can start. What are some of the key challenges that is keeping you up at night, and how Sparkle trying to address them? I mean, if you had to prioritize.
Well, since Stefano and Aamer touched, I would like to continue on the human factor first. So, security guys traditionally were used to work within a clear organization boundaries and within a clear perimeter, being it the internal Sparkle network perimeter or each customer well-defined wide area network perimeter. They knew that there was a data center to protect. They knew that there were a set of firewalls, VPN concentrators, IPS, IDS, probes, whatever. They knew that sporadically there could be one application, two applications that were running in the cloud in a specific cloud data center that they knew, so they knew what were the protection measures there, and they knew that most of the users were accessing this environment or the two cloud applications from within the well-protected fortress, or if they were at home, through a well-defined VPN access. So the concept was that they were used to a security that was location-centric. Now, this started really to move with the advent of SD-WAN, but also with the concept of zero trust. Security is becoming more user-centric, more device-centric. So this was the first shift paradigm in attitude and skills that they had to undergo. Now it's coming what Aamer said. A networking guy sitting in the network operation center, another room, another department, another manager, another culture, another organization. It's coming and say, okay, I need to change this policy that is sending basically to, I don't want to say where, but maybe a couple of days of work of the security guys. So it's not anymore a matter of cooperation between the two, but whether really to start to bring them under an umbrella. It's going to be an organizational changes, might be, but therefore there must be more synergies over there. And the synergies can come probably either by injecting new skills, by taking new people that are coming maybe from an hyperscaler environment and not from a traditional carrier. Because there, the things are already much more smooth from this perspective. It can be to change managers, it can be to lead to organizational changes. Other issues, other challenges that we face are in the new way of designing and answering to tenders run from enterprise customers. Usually, in the past, there were very well separated tenders from an enterprise networking project or an enterprise security project. There were very precise pre-sales skills and very precise pre-sales people that were answering to those things. Again, now things are merging, are becoming more complex from our perspective in order to simplify the life of the enterprise. So I would stop there. I can speak 2 days about it, but I believe Frank can complement with a lot of other topics.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
So I think the human factor has been clearly described, and it's really important. If I turn back in 2018, I think, or 19, I was in MEF, and I was saying that cloud connectivity was the cornerstone of SD-WAN, or something like that. And clearly, what we do really believe is, for all this evolution, infrastructures matters. When I said that, is really, over the last 10 years, companies have moved progressively to the cloud. And on the service provider side, on the editor side, on the security side, we have progressively adapted the infrastructure. Next-gen firewall, cloud-based security a bit, very a bit, say Zscaler than some of us, let's say, like this, up to very recent activity. And on the networking side, what we have done cloud connectivity to go direct to the hyperscaler. We have done internet as a transport in order to do hybrid way of doing things. And then we have moved to SD-WAN, as Daniele was mentioning. And with all these evolutions, people spread across the world, thousands of probes, IoT probes, machine connected, people working, hybrid way of working at home, in the office, and so on. What we do really think is we need to change everything. And we need to think about 2030, when in 2030, 100% of workload will be cloud-based. That's the challenge for us. And when I say infrastructure matters, is really what we are doing now. We'll speak about that later, Marc, but it's all around our telco cloud platform in order to deliver that. Because, and if you think about SASE, the first term, the first definition from Gartner's, was really merging SD-WAN and security. And now Gartner is moving to SSE, aside of SD-WAN. And it's really important because when you are at home, working from home, you don't have a SD-WAN box, neither a virtual SD-WAN box, whatever it is, you have a connection. A fiber connection, hopefully a DSL connection, a 5G connection, whatever it is, very important bandwidth, and you need to go to application very performantly, and I think Stefano spoke about the customer experience, user experience, which is key because at the end of the day for a CIO, what is the most important KPI is I'm launching a new application, I'm putting everyone onto this application. What I'm looking for is my help desk. Is there more calls to my help desk because the new application is cloud-based and people will shout about the quality of service? No, it's really what he's looking for. So it's really something that we need to concentrate on. And to concentrate on, we need really to merge the capability of connectivity and security at the same time because, as you were mentioning, security is a way to downsize the performance because the more you put security, the less the performance is good. And in the meantime, connectivity guys are looking for performance, performance, performance. So it's yes, and it's where you need to merge the two. And thinking about merging the two, and with the keynote just before from Amazon, I think it's very important about orchestrating the two at the same time. Is where we need to be able to, where we think in our future value proposition, what here the service providers is really to make the connectivity, whatever it is, SD-WAN or not, remote workers, whatever, IoT, 5G, whatever, plus security, plus cloud connectivity, orchestrate in a way that the performance and the security will be there for end customers and, of course, for companies.
Well, I think just to summarize briefly, it strikes me that this convergence of technologies is an issue, and that's driving complexity. And then there's the convergence of the organizations, which is a separate, or really an orthogonal issue that's related but obviously different. And that's driving a different kind of complexity. And then where we want to be is to sort of merge those two together for this new value proposition that all of you want to deliver, whether you're delivering it to the base technology or the other opportunity that we didn't talk a lot about, but the whole reason, the whole motivation to at least for many different enterprise customers to opt for managed services, which is they can't deal with that complexity and they can't deal with cybersecurity. So they are going to those who they trust to be able to deliver that. And that is what SASE, at least in my mind, that's what SASE is how it's emerging from where we are today, and we'll touch upon that in a moment. But before we do, I want to open the floor up for questions with our distinguished panelists so that we can at least be able to discuss what's on your mind. So is there any questions? I can't see too well with the lights in my mind. Actually, okay, do we have a microphone? Okay.
Just repeat Marc's question.
All right.
Marc, go ahead.
Yeah.
I guess I'm talking again, sorry. Look, it sounds like we have an interesting organizational problem. We have IT and we have network, and we have to make them one organization. We have security, we have network, we have to make that one organization. That's kind of from a human factor standpoint, an HR standpoint, that's kind of a trivial statement that says somehow we have to bring the organizations together. I mean, you can't just do that, right? Are we seeing any other way to kind of carve it up now to bring these three things together? Like I said, just putting one person in charge of three different organizations ain't going to do it.
Yeah, I can.
Go ahead. Yeah. If I may, I think you have both sides in this remark, and a very important remark is you have service provider vendors. We are inside the technology ecosystem, and you have customers who have exactly the same issue in terms of merging their organization, merging their capability. And in fact, you have two issues. One is organization. Of course, you can put one guy in charge of the infrastructure and managing. And some are doing that. Some are doing that. Some are doing, in terms of customer, I mean, some are doing other way around. Everything is business outcomes nowadays. So they are putting projects led by business lines, and then the security guys, the cloud guys, the network guys are participating to the project in order to deliver the business outcome. And we are really seeing that from our customers. It's very interesting because with that, once you are in the project, you know why you are doing the project. And there is no issue, no bordering on saying, I'm security, I'm networking. I have to deliver with my colleagues. It's the trends we are seeing. And from our own organization standpoint, I think things will move very to one delivery model, one consulting model, because we are very much project-oriented. So from consulting to delivering to integrating to managing, we are moving into that direction of having the one team model, even though, and that's for companies and for us, the main issue is the skills issue, because then you need people with the skill on security, on IT, and on connectivity. And that's the issue. We think, where you were saying, Marc, that we are well placed because, of course, we can offer a large variety of projects for the people with that skills. We can propose career in that space, which if you are a company, you can hire 2, 4, 5 people, but after 6 months, 12 months, they have seen all the projects, and so they are moving because they are quite some value on the market. So it's but that's for me the main issue is the skills, it's really the point. I don't know if you want to.
Does anybody else have anything to add? Okay,
Yeah, there's actually
Aamer, go ahead.
Yeah, there's actually multiple parts to this. I mean, and depending on different organizations try to address it different ways depending on their circumstances, right? So, I mean, to go back into the HR thing, the purpose of an organization, the purpose of a team is to drive alignment and to drive performance, right? You could do that using a virtual team. You could use sort of a cross-functional team. You can sort of force it to happen. It depends on like what the company culture is at the end of the day. If it's a top-down thing, then I think you do have to sort of forcibly put them into the same thing. Now, there's other ways, and there's actually product requirements that come out of this as well, which is like, there's this dreaded RBAC sort of things. Like, do networking and security people, are they looking at the same truths? And generally within an enterprise environment, they don't even have access to the same tools, right? So part of the work on SASE that we're working on is like, hey, when you talked about single pane of glass, it's not just about single pane of glass, it's actually about making sure that the right people have the right access and the right level of controls. Like, can change control be orchestrated in such a way that the right controls are there? Can a security person actually be aware of troubleshooting that's going on? And that goes back deep into the system. We talked about intent earlier today. Those need to be like plugged into a system that can actually understand this stuff at the end of the day. And that contextualization is part of what SASE is about as well.
Yeah, I fully concur. And I can tell you that the problem is having another dimension. It's not just a matter of operation and network operation or security operation within a service provider. It's also a matter of what is the level of co-management and co-monitoring and co-assurance that you want to offer to your customer. And this is a full product statement. And I fully agree with Aamer. We defined our SD-WAN offering and we were evaluated by Gartner for this, for the level of flexibility, for the 50 shades of gray that we provide in terms of co-management, in order to make things a bit more spicy. The same stuff is going to be with SASE, with the operational complexity, but there is no other way around. Because customers are not anymore black or white, it's full outsourcing or full internal. They want to be part of the game. They must be part of the game because they have a business objective to be answered vis-a-vis their consumer customers. So the rule of the game is changing and there is no other way to operate than this.
Yeah. If I can add just one thought on, we used the word human factor before, and I think there's, as you said, multiple ways to address that. I'm not personally a big fan of just sticking people together in a big organization. Actually, these organizations are quite big. There's a lot of concept, and I think, Daniele, you were touching on it, on culture and mindset, and how people treat, because of history. One way that I love to look at it from a people perspective is rotations and collaborations. While we are keeping separate organizations, the push to collaborate. And I love to think us as vendors, as technology vendors, solution providers, I love to think of our product team and engineers to be able to give technologies that enable that collaboration, that enable that single language. Years ago, we talked about intent-based networking, that end-to-end. I come from 10 years in the data center space, and 10 years ago, when we got into software-defined networking in the data center, we had a very similar challenge. We had to bring together IT teams with networking, with application. The cloud was starting to emerge, cloud expertise, and bring all of that together. I think it's a fantastic opportunity. I've seen people shine who were massive networking gurus become application cloud, and I think those are the people who will continue to shine. And I fully agree with Frank. I think that we'll have fantastic opportunities in the industry, not only within our companies, of course.
All right, well, we are running out of time, so I want to thank our panelists for their insights and different perspectives, and also, if there's additional questions, you can certainly, most of us will be here over the next 2 days, so we can certainly get that, we can address that, and enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, man.